Hello everybody, this is the fifth video of my Python GCSE coding tutorial. Today I'm going to be talking to you about comments and how they can be used. So comments may seem simple at first, but there's lots to remember about them and they're very important, especially in your exams. So I'm just going to start by making a file, just saving it. So comments have two main uses. Number one is for clarity. So just like, if I have a program that does something like this, I've written two lines here. Number one, I've written an input statement. This is pretty simple to understand. It's just input in whatever, right? And so what's actually going on here is pretty simple to understand. It's just timesing the number by 2. But someone reading your code, either if they don't get what a line is supposed to be doing, or they don't understand why that's being done, or something like that, then you want to use a comment. So you can initiate a comment by just clicking hash, which is near the enter key on keyboards. Should hopefully know that. And it should go red, and whatever you put past it should also go red. Let's say we want to times by 2 because we want to use this number later in our logic somewhere for certain maths or something that needs it to be in a different scale to what the user's input is. So what we'd say is double none for use in later processing. Also something like that. What you want in a comment for clarity is you want to explain either what a line does or why it does that, or both. So if I have a line and it's hard to tell what it does, or it's hard to tell why it does it, you should add a comment to explain why. You don't need a comment in every line. It's very obvious what this is doing. It's getting an input, right? So you don't need a comment on every line. But it's good to add them if you think it's hard to understand. Something else you've got to remember is when you're writing code, you'll know exactly why you're doing everything. And it's very easy to get caught up thinking, oh, they'll know what I mean. If you have any doubt, if you're doing anything weird, there's no harm in adding more comments than you need. So if you feel like there's anything that's slightly hard to understand or something, just add a comment, because you have no idea who else is going to use this code and what they're going to do with it. Obviously, the code you write in the exam, no one else will use, but you're trying to show to the examiner that you know how to write comments for when you go out into the wider world of computer science. So that's the first use of comments. I'll just leave this here actually. So the second use of comments, I forgot to mention, this text after this hash and the hash itself doesn't get processed. When the computer runs the code, it sees this one and just sees the hash and completely ignores this whole line and then goes straight to this one. So it doesn't matter what you put in these. You can put anything in these and it will not get run. So let's say for testing or something like that, I want to disable this line, but I don't want to delete it so I can get back to it easily later. What I can do is I can just do the same thing, put a hash before it, and that will make it a comment. So now this is commented out, I can just do something like num times 3 or something instead. And yeah, so I've just disabled this line of code. In the exam, the document I'll give you will often have these big lines like this, and it will say global variables or something. and that's where you put your global variables. I personally wouldn't do this, but like outside of the exam, but it's definitely good to keep with the kind of writing format they have in exams. So you should always add these and like conform to them, obviously. So you've got like equals 0 or whatever under this one. Quite a lot of the time, you can also have, in general, you'll have some comments at the top that are like learning 5.py, some simple examples of comments in Python, or something like that, right? Just the name of the program and a simple explanation of something. You often get that. The exam, you probably won't need that. They might already have something on the program you get in exams, but it's just useful to keep that in mind. Also, something to remember in exams is they'll often have comments that look like maybe like this, and they'll be like define a variable called num set to 0 or something like that. On the document they'll give you in the exam, they'll have a list of instructions you need to complete the task, and they'll often, for most of those, if not all of them, they'll have a comment like this corresponding to it, so you can see where you've got to do that in the code. So that's quite useful to remember, that it does say in the code as well, these things, but don't just rely on the ones in the code because it's easy to miss it or whatever. Just remember that there's two lists, effectively. So when I do my walking, talking mock, which is probably the last video I'll do, actually, a bit of a longer video, where I talk you through a paper 2 exam, I'll explain this whole comment thing. It will make more sense there. But just remember, if there's a hash at the beginning of the line, or even partway through, so I could have something like this, and then I could have a comment afterwards. Yeah, you can have something like that afterwards, and it's just everything to the right of the hash and the hash itself doesn't exist to what runs the code. So it just it reads this, but then when it gets to here, it just ignores it. So that's the main thing you've got to remember about comments. To recap, you can use comments for two main things. One is clarity, so what the code does. Number two, for disabling code. So if you're testing something, debugging, whatever, and you just want to disable a piece of code without actually having to hard delete it, that's what comments are for. Thanks for watching. Hope this video was useful, and goodbye.